Got it.
Yeah.
We're good. All right, you guys are on.
Okay. So, Kellie is one of my coaches who's going to be leading the call tonight. She is one of like my OG coaches. Thank you, military discount. She's been with me for a couple of years. Her husband's in the Coast Guard, and her story for the last year is actually really incredible, crazy inspiring. She doesn't look at herself that way, but I do. And just what she's done, she's lost over 80 pounds in the last year. And I'll let her like dive into her full story. But like prior to that with me in Beachbody, she was kind of like, dabbling in a few programs, definitely consistent with Shakeology. But a switch really flipped because of something that happened last year that she's going to dive into. And we've just been talking a lot this year, her and I, about like mindset and how crazy it is. Like once you kind of get control of that, what you're able to do and what you're able to accomplish that you would have never thought you'd be able to accomplish. So I wanted her to just talk to the team, especially going into the new year. And as we're all committing ourselves to our own journeys, because that's our number one priority. I really wanted Kellie to talk to us all about that, because that's really been her whole focus this last year, is just her own journey, and she's crushed it. So I'm excited to call back in later and keep listening. But Kellie, you can go ahead and take it away and tell us a little bit more about your story.
Okay. So I don't know anybody except for Carrie. So I'm just gonna kind of start like from the very beginning. I am from Delaware originally. My whole family is still in Delaware. We're from the Lewis area, and everybody's still there. I met my now husband when I was in college. And my husband is now in the Coast Guard. He's been in the Coast Guard for like 8.5 years, which is why we no longer live in Delaware. So we were in South Florida for about 4 years, and now we're in Hawaii. We've been here for 3 years. So we kind of bounce around every few years. Because of that, I am a physical therapist, which has been really nice since we move around. It's always been easy for me to find a job. I haven't had any issues finding work. It's always been, a big part of what I do, because we don't have any kids. We have a dog, and that, is a big part of our life. But in terms of like time and stuff, like I've always worked. After we got married and moved to Florida, nothing special. I gained happy weight. I was happy-go-lucky. I was living in Florida. I was married. I was not working out or not doing anything super healthy. And so the weight just kind of like came on slowly. It wasn't like it was like one big trigger or anything like that. I was just happy living my life. And the last year that we were in Florida is when I had kind of thought about doing Beachbody for the first time. And it was about that time that Carrie had reached out and asked if I wanted to do a challenge group, which I did. And so I kind of became familiar with challenge groups and coaching and all that kind of stuff a little bit when we were in Florida, although I was not committed to it at all. I was very like up and down, in and out. I used like every excuse in the world, like I'm busy, I'll do that later, like we're getting ready to move to Hawaii. I just wasn't in a frame of mind at all to really commit to a program. And then after that, like I think I finished like one round of 21 Day Fix, and then like it was over. I was done. I didn't like continue with anything after that. And then I just didn't have like a strong enough reason why I wanted to do it, because in my mind, like there was always time to do it later. And then we moved to Hawaii. I got a job here. I was happily working as a PT here. I did sign up with Carrie as like a discount coach because I liked the shakes and I liked having BOD. I liked having the availability to do the workouts, even if I wasn't actually doing them. I liked knowing that I could if I wanted to. And so I was still kind of in touch with Carrie because of stuff like that. And then on December 3rd of last year, so just over, it was a year ago last week, I had a stroke, and it completely came out of nowhere. It was a Monday morning. I woke up to go to work, just like any other Monday, and I was really, really dizzy. I was very dizzy. I was nauseous. I knew that I couldn't go to work that day. And so I stayed at home, told my husband I would be fine. And he was actually leaving that day to go on the boat. My husband is, he's gone about 50% of the time as it is. And it's always been that way. He's in and out all the time. And so that was a week that he was leaving, and he was leaving that morning and wasn't coming back until the end of the week. And I told him I was fine, stayed sick all day long, but I was just dizzy. I was nauseous. It was pretty severe, but it was nothing where like I thought it was anything more significant than like vertigo or something. And then that evening I was still sick, and my husband actually called me and said that the air conditioning on their boat had broken and they had to come back unexpectedly. And so he came home that evening and saw how sick I was still, and he insisted that I go to the hospital. I was mad. I didn't want to. I wanted to go to bed, but I went with him to the hospital because I knew that he had to leave again the next morning if they got the boat fixed. So while I was in the hospital that night, I started really slowly losing feeling on my left side, and I started losing movement on my left side. And I already couldn't walk at this point. I was very, very off balance. And I thought it was just because I was dizzy. But then like throughout the night, I couldn't stand up anymore. I couldn't get out of the hospital bed. It felt like it was happening very slowly. But I didn't understand what was going on. Anyway, later that night, the doctor came in after I'd had an MRI, said, you had a stroke, and your brain is swelling, and we're going to have the neurosurgeon come in and talk to you about surgery. And so that was like the scariest moment of both of our lives for sure. Because, yesterday I was completely fine with nothing going on. And now all of a sudden we're in the hospital talking to a neurosurgeon who's saying that, he might have to put in a shunt or do a decompression or something if they don't get the swelling under control. So anyway, long story short, I did not have to have surgery. The swelling in my brain did stop that night before they ended up doing surgery. But I did end up losing everything on my left side. So by the next morning, I could not wiggle my fingers. I couldn't wiggle my toes. I couldn't feel anything touching me from my ear all the way down to my toes. And so that was scary. It ended up being more scary for my husband than me because I couldn't open my eyes. I had really bad double vision at that time. It affected my eye muscles, and so one eye was higher than the other, which was causing double vision. And so I just kept my eyes closed the whole time. And my husband kept telling me, like, it was the scariest thing when you wouldn't open your eyes. Like, I knew you were awake, but you couldn't open your eyes. And so that whole process was pretty traumatic for both of us. A couple days later is when I started to be able to wiggle my fingers. About 3 or 4 days later, maybe I could start like lifting my hand. But it's been a slow process. And so I ended up being in the hospital from December 3rd of last year. And then I went to a rehab hospital, and I was there through Christmas, and I went home on New Year's Eve of last year. So I have spent this whole year at home, but it's been tough. And when I got home, I was walking, but I was walking with a cane. I could only stand up for very short periods of time. I could only walk short distances. I couldn't walk to the mailbox yet. But I knew that I was making pretty good progress and that I would be able to. I knew because I was familiar with Beachbody and everything, I knew that that Transform 20 was a new program that was getting ready to be released. And it's kind of crazy now when I think about it. Like, I probably should not have started that program 6 weeks after I had a stroke, but I wanted to because I needed to develop some sort of consistency. I needed to do something besides, like, I was continuing physical therapy, and I was going to occupational therapy. I was going to all the therapies and all the stuff, but I needed something that, like, I was going to hold myself to every single day. And so I knew Transform 20 was coming out. I knew that it was a cardio-based program, and that my therapist, when I was in rehab, had told me that cardio is going to be your most important thing right now to help heal your brain. You need the cardio, you need the blood flow, you need the brain healing. The strength will come along with it later. So to do Transform 20, I am not that person who says, like, yeah, I'm going all in. I'm, no excuses. I'm going all in, because I couldn't do that. Like, I couldn't. Actually, the whole first round of Transform 20 that I did, I was having meals prepped and delivered by friends 3 or 4 times a week. And so, like, I didn't have the strength or the energy to stand up in the kitchen for long enough to prepare a meal or to get food together. I couldn't go to the grocery store yet. And so I was completely relying on friends to bring us meals, which was like one of the most humbling experiences to my life at that point, to, like, not be able to take care of yourself in that way. And so, so for me, that first round of Transform 20, like, it wasn't even as much about the nutrition, but, like, just moving and just, like, getting moving. And I'm a physical therapist, so I know how to modify. I know how to exercise and to move your body. So that had a huge advantage there from that point. But I modified every single move of every single workout for that whole first round. But I did it, and it felt good, and I felt accomplished. And I realized that the reason that I was finally able to do a program and to stick with it is because I had this huge mental shift in, like, what my goals were. Like, I no longer had a goal of weight loss or, being a certain size or anything like that. Like, I truly had a goal of, I want to be able to walk to my mailbox without using a cane. Like, I want to be able to walk up a set of stairs without having to hold on to the handrail. I want to be able to walk my dog without worrying that my 20-pound dog is going to pull me over. And so those are the things that I really wanted to do. And so when I made those things my focus, the weight just kind of started coming out. Like, it just started happening. It wasn't even like, it wasn't even a thing that I was, like, I was tracking it only because it was like in the tracker that you were supposed to or whatever, but I wasn't even really like thinking about like weight loss or like being on a journey or like inspiring other people or doing, I wasn't thinking about anything except for myself. And when I was able to prioritize myself, because now like doing rehab was my job, because I obviously couldn't go back to work. And that is when I was able to actually like have some momentum, because I had such a shift in, this is not just like something I'm doing for fun. It's something that I'm doing because like I literally have to do this. I never, so we never found out the reason why I had a stroke, which is part of the, that still causes some anxiety. It's causing less anxiety as we go along, but we did a ton of testing while I was in the hospital, and then a lot of testing as outpatient, and there was never a reason for it. Nothing ever like showed up as being concerning. And so like I took it on myself and made it my mission that, even though I couldn't have done anything to prevent it at this point, I wanted to be like the healthiest possible person to maybe prevent it from happening again in the future. Or if it does happen again in the future, I want to be at a point where my body is going to be best able to recover. Because to be completely honest, like, so this year, so I've done a whole bunch of stuff. Like, since that first round of Transform 20, I went directly into a second round. And then I also did 21-day fix, real time, and then extreme. And then I did morning meltdown 100, that full program. And so over this whole year, I have lost 80 pounds, which, like, it sounds like, so it doesn't feel like it's been that much, but it's a lot. And I think about like where I'm at now, and I am so strong. Physically, I'm very strong, and I'm much more healthy inside than I was a year ago. And so I know that like I might not be able to prevent like my body from having another stroke, but if it does, like, I'm in a lot better situation now physically now than I was when I had to fight through it a year ago. And like a year ago, I had to relearn how to get out of bed. I had to relearn how to walk and how to do everything. And like I made it so much harder on myself during that recovery by being overweight, and then I would if the same thing happened now. So that's just kind of like my own mindset. Like I said, as the time goes by, like I am less like worried that it's going to happen again. And I'm kind of just, it's not something that I think about like as much anymore. But yeah, it's been a huge like mental journey as well as, you know, physical. It's been kind of a little bit of everything. I began sharing what I was doing on social media. I was kind of talking about my journey, because I was trying to keep my friends and family in the loop, because honestly, in the beginning, it was too much. It was too exhausting to try to reach out to people individually and tell people, you know, how I was doing. But after such a major event, obviously I had a lot of family that was concerned and cared and wanted to see that I was doing well. And so in my mind, if I am posting pictures of what I'm doing and posting videos of what I'm doing, then I am giving an update to all of my friends and family without having to call them individually, because I just didn't have the energy to do that. It just wasn't an option. And so eventually it turned into, it was unexpected accountability for me as well, though. Like once I started telling people online what I was doing, if I started like feeling like, okay, now I've told people what I'm doing, and so now I have to follow through and actually do it, because now all of a sudden people are asking me about it, and people are asking me like, hey, I haven't seen you working out in a couple of days, like everything okay? Like not like they were trying to make me feel bad, but people were genuinely concerned. And it was almost like their way of saying like, you didn't have another stroke, did you? But when you know that people are like, are actually concerned and looking for it, it became a little bit more accountability for me. And that was just an extra boost, like for me to keep going, because other people knew what I said I was doing. And so I really wanted to follow through, just to show people, to show them that I was okay. It has not been smooth sailing by any means the whole time. I actually had, I had last summer, so, okay, nobody knows this story except for my husband. I haven't even took care of this. But last summer, I was getting ready to, I think it was either right before I started Morning Meltdown 100 or right after I started. But I know that I had recently shared a progress picture, before and after picture, because it was something that like, obviously like those are vulnerable pictures. Like it puts you, like it makes most, well, I don't know, it makes me feel really uncomfortable to post before and after pictures. But again, like my family wanted to see stuff like that. And so I had just posted one, and it was not long after that, I was at the beach with somebody that I used to work with. And we were talking about what I had been doing and everything. And she told me that after I had posted that picture, they were talking about it in the lunchroom at work or whatever. And they were talking about, how crazy it was and how it was so cool, like what I was doing, and that I was making so much progress. And apparently, one of the girls that I used to work with, she is a dietitian on the clinic. And she's a friend. She like brought me meals and like came to visit me in the hospital and everything. But apparently she said, I'm actually not that surprised that Kelly had a stroke, because she wasn't exactly living the healthiest lifestyle. And sorry. So like that crushed me, like that hurt. So that hurt because from the time that the doctor told me in the hospital that I'd had a stroke, my very first the very first emotion that I had was being ashamed and like being embarrassed by it, because like I'm a physical therapist, like I'm in healthcare. I know what the risk factors are for stroke. I know what people say are some of the common reasons for stroke. And like, And so my initial thought when I had the stroke was like, what did I do for this to happen? Like, what did I do to cause it? And I knew at this point that by the time that like my friend told me this, I knew that I hadn't done anything. And like I knew, but it was still something that that I was fighting through mentally. And so for me to hear that one of like my friends had said that, you know, she wasn't surprised because I wasn't the healthiest person. I'm like, well, fuck that. Like, I'm not the unhealthiest person either. Like, there's plenty of other people that are like, I don't know. I just got really, it hurt, but I also got mad. But at that point, like, I withdrew a lot, and like, I didn't want to post, I didn't want to post any pictures because it has been like my biggest fear for people to think that like, it has been such a fear of mine for people to think that I like did something to cause this to happen to me. And like, and I know I didn't, but that really hit hard. And like, that was one of those moments where like, I could have very easily, just pulled away and like, and shut down and not continued because I really didn't want to. I didn't want to show anybody what I was doing anymore at all. But I kept listening to podcasts. I kept reading personal development. I kept kind of like diving into a lot. I, you know, was just doing like everything I could to kind of mentally keep going. And so I kept going to finish Morning Meltdown 100 because I knew how good I would feel when I finished it. But I didn't post any before and afters. I didn't post any pictures because I didn't really want people talking about it. But yeah, so that's still a struggle, but I have learned, I've learned so much, so much this year. I've learned, you know, that you have to start, like, it doesn't matter how slow you start or like what your starting point is, but like, you have to start somewhere. And I had like a big, I had a big wake up call. I had a big event happen that kind of triggered me to get started. But at the same time, like, I could have made every excuse in the world why this year was not the year for me to start. Like well, I still feel like crap every day. I still have a lot of dizziness. I still have a lot of issues with balance and with coordination and with all kinds of stuff. And so, like, I definitely had every reason to make excuses as to why I didn't want to start. And it hasn't been perfect. It hasn't been like a perfect journey. And like the programs that I've done, like, yeah, I've skipped days and I've doubled up on other days, but I've gotten through them eventually because I knew that like if I didn't do this now, I wasn't going to do it later, because I had been telling myself for the past like 4 years that I was going to do this, and like I never went through with it. And so once I made myself a priority, like in my own life, I was able to make changes. And like, I'm somebody, like, I get overwhelmed easily. I could not make all of these changes all at one time. And so like, I just started implementing like small changes and like giving myself grace when things didn't work, but at the same time being firm with myself and saying like, hey, you can't fail. Like, failure is not an option here anymore. Like, you have tried this before and you've given up on yourself, and like, you can't do that anymore. And so I think I've been harder on myself this year than anybody else has been on me. Obviously, my family has been amazing, and my friends have all been amazing, and they've all been so supportive and saying like, oh, you don't have to do this. Like, just focus on, just relax, or just do this, or just do that. So I've been harder on pushing myself than anybody else has, but it's been worth it. It's been the hardest year of my life, but one year ago today, I never could have imagined like where I am right now. And so I'm actually like looking forward into the next year. I'm actually like, I've never really made goals before, but now I kind of have to I make goals, but like as a PT, I make goals for other people. I don't make goals for myself. And so now, I'm looking at what kinds of things like I want to accomplish in the next year. And like this past year has been all about me. Like, I have been fiercely protective, like, of myself and my own journey, and anybody who like is not beneficial for my journey is just not a part of my life. And that's just, it's kind of been one of those things where I'm like, I'm sorry, but I'm more important than you are in my life. And so in this next year, I'm kind of hoping to be able to share more what the opportunity is, as far as like actually like coaching and running groups and stuff like that. But this past year, it's been all about me. So, yeah, sorry guys. I don't even know. I just kind of started talking. Does anybody have like any questions or? Anything?
I just wanted to say thank you. I'm covering my hair because it's so gross, so that's why my head's cut off. But I just wanted to say thank you so much for sharing your story, because I know that wasn't easy for you. Mm-hmm. I'm glad I don't live in Hawaii, and I can't contact that girl, because if I saw her, I would probably wring her neck. So.
She has no idea. Like, she doesn't know that I know what she said. And honestly, it's one of those things where like I would rather know if somebody's saying something about me. But the only reason my friend even told me is because we were on the beach and she was drunk, and like she just started chatting. And I can't drink anymore. I haven't had a drink in over a year now. And so, I was stone cold sober. And so I remember the whole conversation. I don't even know if my friend remembers that she told me.
But like, that's on that girl. That's not a reflection of you. Like, she's clearly very insecure with herself. You're making positive changes in your life. That clearly shows that she is not happy in her own life.
Yeah, I agree with that completely. And like, I can see more of that now, because it's something that like I've worked through a lot over the past few months. And like, again, it's not that it to me or like was intentionally trying to hurt me, but that was like the one thing that like more than anything would really get me is like talking about like, not that she said you deserve this, but like, oh yeah, I mean, I wasn't surprised it happened. And I'm like, she's a dietitian. She's somebody that like I respected, that I had gone to for like advice and healing and all that kind of stuff, and like was talking to her as a friend. And so to know that was like my biggest fear was for people to be saying things like that about me, and like to know that oh yeah, that is happening. It was just it was hard. And that was definitely a moment where like I thought about just completely throwing in the towel and saying like, well, whatever. But yeah, no, that's when I kind of dug in and knew that again, if I knew that if I stopped, I wasn't going to start again.
Mm-hmm. You got to use those people as fuel to light your fire.
Yeah.
Prove them wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I was gonna say the same thing. As soon as you said that, I just wanted to like, with all the Christmas spirit that I have in me, just totally that girl. But it's a good thing I'm not there either. Do you
Okay, we're not forever friends. That's fine.
what's that?
I said we're not going to be forever friends, so it's fine.
I know, but
Much to begin with.
it doesn't matter who says something like that. It's just hurtful. And just in the world that we live in, like, you know, where we're all just striving to like really live out the just be nice factor that, like, you know, people lived by 50, 60 years ago. Like, I don't, and that hasn't been around for like a long time, probably when like we were all in school and stuff. But, you know, just the be nice factor of being a human being, like, and, you know, I don't know. There's a lot of things you could say that, like, obviously Jen said, like, she's not in a position where she is comfortable with something or whatever, but, you know, then we don't really want to judge her either. So maybe she's
No, and I think more than anything, like, it definitely reminded me of, like, you know, I feel like when we were kids, like, we used to, there, you know, we were always told, like, don't talk about people behind their backs. Like, they always find out. And it was just one of those reminders, like, again, she has no idea that I know that she said that. And she probably never even thought about that comment ever again after she made it. But, like, words are really powerful, and, like, words can be really hurtful, even if, like, you don't intend it to be hurtful. And, like, that, again, it was one of those moments that it could have sent me spiraling. Like, if that had happened before I had really been diving into this journey, and before I had been doing all this personal development, and talking to my psychologist, so I still go to a psychologist a couple times a month, and, like, before I had actual support, like, if that would have sent me spiraling in the other direction. But, like, because of everything that I had been building on for the 6 months prior to that, even though it hurt, I was still in a position where, like, I could keep going.
yeah. So that actually, I'm glad you kind of said a couple of those things about personal development stuff, because that was going to lead me into my question for you. So, like, I know like, you talked about the workouts and the programs that you completed and stuff. Can you kind of talk about what kind of changes you made other than like the workouts? Like, was there anything significant like in your nutrition, or just in like you said, you did a lot of personal development. Like, what did you do? Like, how did you like kind of go from somebody who was like, you know, or was it just that light bulb like switch, like where you had this life altering event and you were like, okay, I got to do this?
So that was part of it, in terms of, like, I made a ton of changes. And it was triggered by having that light bulb moment. It was triggered by having that moment where it was like, okay, this, like, literally, this is your job now. Like, when this happened, I mean, I was waking up on a Monday morning to go to work. Like, I was working full time as a physical therapist. Like, to be frank, like, I'm PT, and my husband's in the military. Like, I make the money in our family, and my husband provides, like, a house and health insurance and stuff like that. But, like, as far as, you know, it was a huge shift when all of a sudden we didn't have my paycheck coming in anymore, and we didn't have a chance to prepare for that. It was very sudden. And so in my mind, like, all of a sudden, okay, like, this is your job. Like, you have to do this, because, like, this is the only thing that you can do at this point, is try to get better, or, you know, figure your shit out, or do, you know, whatever you got to do. Like, you can't just sit around and wallow and feel sorry for yourself. Like, you got to be doing something. And so in terms of nutrition, I did, actually, funny enough, I talked to my dietitian friend about what changes might be beneficial and helpful in terms of reducing systemic inflammation, because I knew that I'd had an injury to my brain, and that you know, after a stroke, you really want to decrease the inflammation that's in your blood vessels. And so for me, that included eliminating gluten and dairy from my diet. And I already wasn't drinking because I couldn't drink anymore anyway. And so those diet-wise, nutrition-wise, those things actually feel good. It once I cut those things out of my diet, and I am like, I definitely never tell anybody like that you have to like eliminate anything. For me, like, it was very much a health concern, because I was targeting inflammation. And so but then after I made those specific health changes, I felt really good. And like, I haven't felt the need to add those things back in again, because I feel good, and I'm kind of used to the routine now. I can't drink. I used to love wine. I used to drink quite a bit of wine, probably more than I should. And I can't drink anymore because, well, I mean, I can. My neurologist told me months ago that I can. But this stroke affected my cerebellum, which is in the back of my brain, and that controls your balance and your coordination. And so my neurologist said, if you have a drink, you're probably going to feel drunk very quickly. It's going to affect you very quickly. And for me, it's just not really worth it. My husband, who, like Carrie said, he's in the Coast Guard. He does law enforcement, and he thinks it's funny to practice his field sobriety tests on me, because I know we have a sick sense of humor, but I fail them. Yeah, I fail them every time because of the injury to my cerebellum. And so we like had to have a discussion about, okay, if you get pulled over, this is what you have to do. Like, you have to talk to them. Yeah. So anyway, those are I'm kind of rambling. The biggest like nutritional changes, but then personal development is not something that I had ever really done consistently before. For me, when part of like what I wanted to be able to do being at home every day is walk the dog. Like, I started, well, for a while after I got home, I couldn't walk the dog because he would pull me over, even though he's so tiny. But once I got to the point where I was able to take the dog for a walk, I started really getting into listening to podcasts because I kind of got bored listening to music while I was walking every day. And so I started listening to podcasts. And so that has been like the main, like I have read books, and I do set aside some time for reading, but probably the most consistent thing I do is just seek out podcasts. And they have mostly been about like personal, like emotional, mental, like feeding my soul type of stuff, as opposed to like business type stuff. So it's been a big difference. And then I've been seeing my psychologist now for probably like 6 months, that I go to her. And so talking a lot with her about the importance of self-compassion and gratitude and meditation and all this kind of stuff that I never like ever would have even thought about doing a year ago. But now, like, now I kind of have more of a mindset of like, well, if it's not going to hurt you, then you might as well give it a try. And so I've actually like enjoyed incorporating some of that stuff into like my routine. And so I'm really working now on trying to develop a morning routine, and starting to incorporate some of these things like into a consistent morning routine. So that's going to be one of my goals for the next year is kind of nailing that down and like what I actually like to do to be my most productive self in the morning.
Cool. Awesome. Yeah, I think I mean, I know probably all of us before we got into like this kind of world thought, meditation and even yoga and like some things like that and like gratitude journals and stuff were probably like silly frou-frou, but I think that they really do play an immense part in like setting your tone for the day and like obviously just changing everything in between your ears, the way you like see and think about everything in life. So I'm really glad like to hear that was a lot of stuff that you've incorporated now too. So does anybody have any like last minute any questions at all? Otherwise I'll wrap up quickly with one last question for Kellie. Okay. So everything has been amazing, and I'm so thankful that you were willing to share your journey with all of us and your story from the last year. I know it's like, I mean, I can't even imagine how hard it is to even just have to rethink about it all the time, but then to voluntarily tell it, like that's something, it's just really hard. So thank you so much for doing that. Do you have any, like, what would you say to somebody, just before we sign off, like, what would you say to somebody who just gets into this, obviously, like, does our programs and products and things, but just doesn't have any belief that they can really, like, get results or make a change or go all in with it? Like, how to make a big change? Like, what would you tell somebody like that if you had a coach joining your team and they were like, Kellie, you had this amazing story and I don't have that story? What would you say to them?
Yeah, a couple of things. Like, so one, I think that you don't have to make a ton of changes all at one time. If you can only change one small thing at a time and like focus on that one thing every day, like even if it's as small as like, we all say like we need to drink more water, like no matter what, like the one thing is you want to change, like it doesn't have to be everything all at one time or else you fail. And I think that sometimes we don't give ourselves enough time, and we think that we have to do everything in such a short period of time. And like, everything that I've done so far, I mean, obviously it's been a huge learning curve. There's been a lot of ups and downs, and it's been this whole past year. So it's not like if I had just stopped after that first round of Transform 20 after 6 weeks, then I saw some results and some changes in that first 6 weeks. But like, if I had said, all right, that's it, that's good enough, like, then I never would have been able to really like see what is possible. And so I think that like, even if you don't necessarily like believe the big picture. So I'm not good at being a big picture person. I'm good at being like a one foot in front of the other person. And so 1 year ago, I absolutely did not see myself like losing 80 pounds and being able to start running and being able to do this and that. Like, I didn't picture that for myself a year ago. Like, I pictured, okay, what do I have to do tomorrow? Like, what do I have to do the next day? Like, what do I want to accomplish next week? And so I think that sometimes we put a lot of pressure on big picture stuff. And I think that that works for some people, but I don't think that it works for everybody. Yeah. There was something else I was gonna say. I don't remember.
No, those were great. Thank you so much, Kelly. Really appreciate your time.
Thanks for having
I think it's safe to say I can, attest for everybody who's been on the call. We are rooting for you 100%, praying for you. Thank your hubby for his service, his continued service. And we're going to be, watching your guys' journey in 2020, especially with him in his deployment. But we're really thinking of you. Thank you so much. And don't be mad at me, but when it's time for the Beachbody Challenge, we must all share that with everyone we know and get Kelly to be celebrated because she has done amazing, because she did submit for that. So thanks, Kelly. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for wanting to hear my story.
Absolutely. Thanks, girls.
Cool.
Night.